best use of everyone's time. I just want to welcome you and introduce myself. I am Megan Lohman. I'm the founder and co-CEO of Plan Forward. I see a lot of our current customers on here, so it's good to see some of you. For those who may not be familiar with Plan Forward, we are a dental membership software. We help practices in about 40 states across the country to implement profitable membership plans to help your uninsured patients. And today, our topic of should you be insurance free is just top of everyone's mind. And it really complements the membership plans. So it's just, I couldn't be more excited to have Steve here to deliver this message today. Before we dive in, just want to remind everyone that these webinars are so much more impactful and fun when they're interactive. So please use the Q&A. Steve's going to be doing the presentation, but I will be watching that and we'll be happy to ask those questions as they come in. Also, we are recording this, and so in the next day or two, keep an eye out for the email. We will follow up with the replay. Steve is offering an ebook download, so we will include some information in that email with how to get in touch with him and with the company, and also future events. So just be on the lookout for that follow-up email. So without further ado, I'm just so excited and honored to introduce Steve Anderson, our presenter. Steve is one of the most prolific entrepreneurs, authors, philanthropists for sure, and presenters in dentistry. If there were one phrase to describe Steve, it would have to be the yes man, which, by the way, Steve, I love that. Steve has worked with professionals around the world to transform their practices, businesses, and their teams to top 10% performance status with innovative patient service systems that make it easier for patients to say yes to treatment. He's worked with some of the biggest names in dentistry to build their practices. His systems transform practices and the people in them. A really cool thing is he's been named Dental Businessman of the Year by Excellence in Dentistry. And he's the founder of Total Patient Service Institute, Crown Council, which I'm so excited. I'm attending their event in January for the first time. And the Smiles for Life Foundation, which is his foundation that has raised nearly $50 million for dental and children's charitable projects around the world. He's also authored numerous books and done a million other wonderful things for not only dentistry, but business people in general. So with that, thank you again, Steve, for being here. We're so happy and honored that you're here, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan, and welcome everyone. We're going to have an information-packed next few minutes. So I'd highly encourage that you take notes, and I'm going to give you some resources as we go along that'll help on the implementation side of what we're going to talk about. So Megan, I'm a big believer that the only purpose of education is not knowledge. It is results producing action. So this is going to be very action oriented today. I'm going to give you some specific things, specific questions, specific analysis, and some great verbal skills today that you'll be able to use with all of your patients. So a little bit of something here for everybody that should have a huge, huge impact on the success of your practice, regardless of what direction you decide to take. So with that, as Megan mentioned, just for context, and this would be important for everybody to know, Megan, I'm not a dentist. I just play one on TV. And I got pulled into dentistry a long time ago by some well-meaning dentists who discovered what we were doing in the business world. They found application to it in dentistry, and we've worked in dentistry ever since. And dentistry has changed my life personally. I've got a long clinical journey that was life-altering. That is the topic for another webinar sometime. But I love dentistry. I love what dentistry does for the public. And our mission across all of our organizations is to make dentistry the #1 patient service segment in healthcare. That when your patients come to your office, they use you as the comparison with everybody else that they use in healthcare. And I think we've got a huge opportunity to do that. So as far as our context and where I gather my information, as Megan mentioned, we have a coaching education company called Total Patient Service with coaches that are deployed all over the country every day in dental practices implementing our systems. So on a daily basis, we're gathering data from practices all over the country based on what's going on, what the trends are, what's working, what's not working. As an outgrowth of that, our user community is called the Crown Council. So it's an affiliation of thousands of practices all over the country that subscribe to creating the right kind of culture in their practice. So again, another data set from which we draw. So with that, and Megan, thank you for mentioning one of my favorite things, our Smiles for Life Foundation. So big fan of doing good along with what you do in your practice. So that's probably a whole nother discussion as well some other time. So here we go. Here's really what's putting this topic front and center, front burner for every practice in America. And that is over the last year and a half, we've had highest inflation we've had in 40 years, price increases, staffing challenges, all kinds of economic pressure on the practice, while at the same time, I'd be surprised if anybody here listening got any kind of a letter from any of your insurance companies saying, hey, we're going to increase your reimbursement rate. We're going to pay you more. The irony of this is while things have been going up in terms of the cost of running a practice, insurance reimbursement rates continue to go down. And so the trend is down, expenses are going up, and we have this tension of like, how do we make all this work? And so that's really what's brought this topic, Megan, front and center. Every day in our organizations, we get phone calls from practices, and that's the question they're asking, which is the title of today's webinars. That's the first question: is should I be insurance free? I mean, should we be doing this outside of insurance? And it's a really, really good question to ask. And what we're going to go through today, if you came here for answers, guess what? I'm just going to load you up with more questions because there's not one answer that fits everybody. Different practices, different markets, different situations. So what I'm going to give you today is a series of questions that I believe every practice needs to be asking themselves, not just now, but ongoing, and some resources that help you come up with the right answer for your practice. I'm going to give you some case studies of practices that took two totally different paths, and both were very, very successful. So again, there's not just one answer, but when you ask the right questions, you'll come up with the right answer. I'm a big fan of what I call natural laws. So these are consistent things that run throughout business, throughout our human existence, that when you understand the law, then you can understand how things tend to trend. And here's one of them, the natural law of pricing, which basically says that over time, prices tend to decline. Now, this I'm not talking about inflation, but I'm talking about just products and services in general. So you can take technology, for example. In dentistry, when we came out with the first intraoral camera technology, Megan, when those first came out, I think the first intraoral camera cost like $50,000. And today, you can get a pretty decent intraoral camera for $1,000, right? So in other words, as products and services tend to expand, we figure out ways to be more efficient. And so there is always downward pressure on pricing. When you add the inflation thing to it, then you kind of have this counteractive thing. But the natural law says there's always downward pressure on prices and to deliver products and services more efficiently and at a lower cost. So when we look at the whole insurance equation, yeah, insurance companies are trying to force this to say, yeah, you got to figure out how to run more efficiently, and then you have the realities of running a business because, yeah, it does continue to cost more to run a business. So again, you've got these diametrically opposed forces that make this even a more challenging equation. So what do you do? You know, what's the impact of inflation, downward pressure on insurance fees? What do you do? What's next? So we're going to go through these series of questions and that I hope you'll jot down and then start working through these questions for your practice. So here's question number one. What percentage of your revenue is contracted revenue? So I'm gonna ask you to do this in two ways. One, just for round numbers, if you brought in $1 million in your practice, what percentage, how many of those dollars came from insurance reimbursement? Because that's a really important number, Megan, and I'll break that down for you, just rule of thumb, at least what we look at. So what percentage of your revenue, as well as what percentage of your active patient base is contracted, right? So I'm going to take all your active patients in our book at Total Patient Service. We consider an active patient anybody who's been in the last 18 months. So what percentage of those patients are contracted versus fee for service? And that, because that's going to have a bearing on the decision that you decide to make. So for example, I'll just give you a rule of thumb. If you have, as far as a percentage of your patient base, if you have 30% or less of your patients that are contracted with any one insurance company, we look at that one way. If it's more than 30%, we look at it a different way. So for example, if it's less than 30%, if it's like 10% or 12%, then we've got a lot more flexibility because we can make some changes potentially in that relationship without it creating a huge impact on the practice. Whereas if it's greater than 30%, now we're talking about, there's some potential economic ramifications to the practice that we may need to step a little bit more carefully before we make any move in changing that relationship. So 30% is kind of our magic number. It's a rule of thumb. It's not exact, but 30% for any one plan. I'll give you an example today where it's a practice that had over 50% of their patient base was contracted with a large dental insurance company, which we all know the name of, which I will not mention. But if I'm looking at half the patient base is coming from one particular insurance company, then we got to look at that and be careful before we, disrupt anything. So food for thought.
Steve,
Now,
can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
When you say contracted, you mean in-network?
In-network, correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I use in-network, contracted interchangeably, but yes, in-network. So you've signed a contract to be a provider for that insurance company with your associated contracted rates. Okay. Yep. Question number two. Yeah, so once you've decided to determine what percentage of your patient base, question number two is, I want to know what your procedure mix is. So Megan, here's the example. I get this call a lot and, should I be insurance free? And one of the first questions I'm going to ask after, the patient mix is, tell me about your procedure mix. What kind of dentistry are you doing? And if it is bread and butter, general dentistry, crown and bridge, which is great, nothing wrong with that. One of the first recommendations that I'm going to make is before they make any move, they need to expand their procedure mix. Because if you're going to go out of network, then you have to be able to do more on the patients you're going to serve. And you have to look at ways that you can provide a better service and more service than maybe the contracted office down the street. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to expand into other procedures. I'm going to start doing more cosmetic dentistry. I might look at airway. I'm going to look at how we can be treating perio at the highest level. I'm going to be doing aligners. I'm going to expand my procedure mix so that I have more to offer the patients that I serve. So look at your procedure mix. Mm-hmm. and put together, an aggressive plan. I think this is good for everybody is what's on the horizon. What are you going to learn next that you're going to add to your procedure mix? Should you be doing implants? I mean, there's so many things that you can add to the mix, but the broader your procedure mix, then the more we have to work with in terms of flexibility in what direction we take the practice. So smaller procedure mix, I'm more limited. Broader procedure mix, I have more flexibility. So that is question number two. Then question number three, are we tracking, Megan? You ready for
Yep,
question number three?
tracking. No
Number
question.
three is, what's the competition like? Now, I'm going to say this with this footnote. I don't believe that dentists are competitors with other dentists, because when you look at the fact that we only have 50 to 60% of the population goes to the dentist every year,
There's
and
plenty.
there's plenty to go around for everybody. And for the people who are looking, they're going to be the ones who are looking, they're looking at what all their options are. So uh, I want to survey the market and kind of see what everybody else is doing. Not that I'm going to follow what everybody else is doing, but one of the basic common sense business secrets is that you find a need and you fill it. You find a need and fill it. So what are the needs in your market? What's the competition doing? What are their dentists doing? Where are the needs in your community? We did, as an example of this, Megan, we have a practice that we work with in a more rural community. We went through this entire process, asked all of these questions. And when we looked at the needs of the community and what was actually offered in the community, not a whole lot of competition. But when we looked at the needs of the community and the employers and dental benefits and the whole deal, it was a soul searching experience for the team, because they're so connected in that community, and they really had to ask themselves, what do the people in our community really, really need? And what do we need to do to really serve their needs? And in their case, they chose to stay in network. They just felt like, this is what the community needs. And this is, as a responsible business, this is what we need to do. And so I'll show you some directions that we took there to make the practice, more efficient, but still deliver great service. So really it's looking at all these variables. And at the end of the day, it's a personal decision what you decide to do. You are not everybody's dentist. You're not. And if you try to serve everybody, you're going to end up serving nobody. So, and that's really the next question that I'm going to ask you to ponder is, who's your target market? Who are you there to serve? Everybody needs a dentist. Even people without teeth need a dentist. So everybody's a prospect. You cannot possibly serve everybody. So that's really the final question really here is, who are you there to serve? Who do you want to serve? Who are you best equipped to serve? So with all of those different variables, I promised you I was going to give you a lot of questions. Yeah, these are a lot of questions to really say, man, we really have to take a look at this and see what really matters the most and how we want to position the practice.
Um, well, we had somebody I thought write a question. They just said everyone's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's so true.
Correct. Yeah, it's so true. You're not, and that's I think true. I think it's just it's a good place to stay grounded, is to say, yeah, you're not everybody's cup of tea. You're not everybody's dentist, and
Mhm.
that's okay.
How
Um,
often do people, like, they may have their target market or they have their kind of patient profile that's currently in their practice, but part of this process is they want to retarget, they want to shift, and they
Absolutely.
sort of want to pivot to a new target market. They want to
Yeah.
identify that new, what they want their practice to look like.
Yeah. So here's a rule of thumb that's not not. Oh, there's a bonus. You ready for a bonus, Megan?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm always ready.
Okay. The typical in-network practice. So let's say 80% of the patients are in-network. The typical in-network practice will spend about 4% of practice revenue on marketing. As you're getting a lot of patient flow from insurance lists and all that kind of stuff. The typical practice that we work with that is fee for service, that is out of network, is spending more like 8 to 10%
Yeah.
marketing. Now,
Yeah.
again, there's some variability. The more rural your practice is and the less competition, the less you have to spend on marketing. You may be the only act in town. Maybe they don't have a choice. But in general,
Yep.
Those are just some general rules of thumb. So if you're going to shift, if you're going to retarget, then you might want to consider how you're going to allocate resources to attract the kind of patients that you want, especially if you're going to go out of network. Then I want to ramp up in advance to say, okay, who are we going to target? How are we going to focus the message? Where are we going to deploy those resources to start attracting the type of patients that we really want?
Makes sense.
So with that, we're going to take a magnifying glass and I'm going to do 2 case studies. These are real practices that went through this process and asked themselves all these questions and then made some decisions accordingly. And these are 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. I'll just give you a snapshot of coming attractions. The first one is a practice that went through all these questions and they stayed. They decided they were going to stay in network. The second one is one who just made a complete exit. He just got completely out of network. Understanding that there's variation in here. You may decide to drop some plans, keep others. There's all kinds of different variables and ways you can do this. So I'm going to give you the 2 extremes because they're instructive. So here's the first one is year 1. This is a practice that had expanded into a brand new location. Megan, they built a brand new, gorgeous building. It was awesome. And it's like they moved
Double
in the
negative.
first quarter, like March, and in November, they got a letter from their biggest insurance company saying, "Oh, by the way, in 30 days, we're cutting back on all your fees by 20%." So you can imagine, I mean, these guys had just taken on a big debt load to build this new building, counting on the cash flow, the whole deal. And they looked at, started looking at the analysis and it's like, holy smokes, we're going to lose potentially 20% of our revenue. They were panicked,
What
absolutely
percent,
panicked.
what percent of their revenue was attributed to this contract?
60%.
Oh,
So it was, I mean, this was a 911 call when we
right.
first got it. It was a client, we had helped them get into their new building. And when the day they got the letter, whew, yeah. So here's what we did. I'm going to walk you through exactly what we did. So again, 56% of the patients were contracted. They were going to be impacted by this fee change. So first thing we did, because we looked at it, we said 56% of the patient base, we need to step very carefully. We can't just go out of network. 50, I mean, it's over half the patient base. So they made the decision. It's like, man, this is happening so fast. We need to figure out a way to stay in network, but how to do better with what we've got. So we went on a rapid fire program. We call it maximum reimbursement to say, okay, how can we optimize everything that's going on in the existing practice to do better? Here's what we did. So we put in place a written x-ray protocol, which means who gets x-rays, what type, and when. It was a written protocol so that every patient that walked into the practice, the question is, okay, do they have the diagnostics that they're supposed to have in order for us to do our job? So this is very clinically driven. This is not about how to get more money from the patients. It was really, hey, we really need to take a look. Are we doing the best job that we can for our patients? And if we don't have diagnostics, you can't diagnose. So do we have diagnostics? So when do we do a full mouth series? When do we do a pano? And then are all the exams being charged out correctly? So are we using the right codes? So this is a whole other topic, Megan, in terms of coding correctly. This time of year, there's new codes that are coming on the horizon for next year, codes that are being sunsetted. So that's a whole other topic. But so it was the first place is, okay, from the very first out of the gate, do we have the x-ray protocol? Who gets one? When? Are we charging everything out correctly? And then, that was put in place immediately. So every patient that walked in the practice, we're doing the right thing in terms of diagnostics. Second, so we hopped over on the hygiene side and made sure that we had a written perio protocol in place. So this is, when a patient presents with these kind of conditions, what does it mean and how do we treat it so that perio is being treated consistently across the board? This particular practice had 6 full-time equivalent hygienists. So
Whoa.
getting consistent across here and making sure that everybody is subscribing to the same protocol made a big difference. So we implemented a comprehensive non-surgical periotherapy program. So treating periodontal disease non-surgically, so that, here's the thing, as a non-dentist, Megan, I'll tell you this, number one most prevalent disease in the world is, guess what?
Periodontal disease.
It's periodontal disease. You know how I know that?
How?
Trivial Pursuit. It's
There's
a
that one.
question. It is an actual question in Trivial Pursuit. What is the most prevalent disease in the world? It's periodontal disease. Everybody's got it. So there's so much opportunity here to diagnose it correctly and to treat it, educate patients with what we know about perio today and its lethal nature and its whole oral, the systemic link. And one of the most recent studies found that there is one of the bacteria associated with periodontal disease that they've now found causal to Alzheimer's. It causes Alzheimer's disease, not linked. It causes it. That's a whole other topic.
Wow.
So we looked at the whole hygiene program and what are we doing to effectively treat disease? We're in the business. We should be doing this correctly. So this was a slight increase, but we increased perio treatment percentage from 21% to 20, so a 5% increase there. Again, none of these are just huge groundbreaking changes, but when you start adding them all up, you'll see what the net effect is. So we implemented a gingivitis program, meaning started treating periodontal disease at the earliest stage. It's not going to get better on its own. So let's treat it, and giving patients the opportunity to treat it early. And as a result of that, hygiene per visit productivity went from $141 to $196.
Mm-hmm.
So you start adding that up across all the full-time equivalent hygienists. That's, again, when you look at that, that's a pretty significant, over time, pretty significant nature. So focus on hygiene. Oh, and they added another hygienist as well. This is one of my favorites, Megan. It has to do with your clinical protocol, but we moved the fluoride percentage from half the patients to 90% of the patients, right? So just, again, little procedures, everybody should have it. As long as it's part of your perio protocol, then everybody should have it. We just made sure that the systems were in place so that everybody had the opportunity to do it. From a scheduling standpoint, there was a daily consistent outbound effort to make sure the schedule stayed full. So, unscheduled treatment, patients that hadn't been in, it was a daily discipline to make sure that that outbound effort was happening every day to maximize the schedule. We took the pre-appointment rate from 35% to 90%.
Wow.
So, and that has that is taking patients, and basically we turned that office into the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you're never leaving this practice, right? So nobody, the mantra became no one leaves without a future scheduled appointment. We're locking the door until you, I'm being silly, but not really. That became the discipline. Is every day it was like, who left today without a future appointment, and why, right? Because we're trying to maximize the use of everybody's time. And if a patient leaves without a future scheduled appointment, we just created a mountain of work to track them down. And that's personnel time. So pre-appointment rate, huge increase. We made sure that the scheduling template was in place. So we blocked schedules. So we're maximizing scheduling time, minimize doctor downtime, so that when they're in there, man, they are, they're working handpiece in hand and doing dentistry. It was all about maximizing that schedule. And then we implemented a same-day treatment strategy, which is today, Megan, when you think about it, time is our most valuable asset as consumers. We pay money to save time.
Yeah.
Like, are you an Amazon Prime member?
Oh yeah, it's like,
Why?
tomorrow between 4 and 8 a.m. Check.
Yeah, why? Why do you pay to be an Amazon Prime member?
Because it saves me time going.
There you go. Exactly. I could give you so many. So same thing in dentistry. Is most patients, we've given the choice, they'd rather just get it done today than have to schedule another appointment and come back and the hassle and the schedule. So So we put a whole strategy in place to maximize same-day treatment so that we can make better use of patients' time and chair time. And we have to, turn that chair less. We can do more while they're here today. Here's the next step. We maximize their fee schedule, their fee for service fee schedule. So we did a fee analysis and we made sure that all of their fee for service fees were at the 80th percentile. So this is analysis you can do looking at the fees in your marketplace. We recommend 80th percentile, that all your fee for service fees are in that area.
It's great if you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll give you a resource for that in just a minute. And then this refers back to an earlier topic, which is the doctors expanded their skill set. So they decided they were adding implants to the practice. They got some help with that, got some additional training around implants, started doing comprehensive restorative and added some cosmetic procedures to their skill set. They added a periodontist 2 days a month so that they could keep that perio in the practice. And they started doing pedo 1 day a week. They brought in a pediatric dentist so that they could serve more of the children of their patients. So again, they just expanded the whole clinical set so that they could do more. They could offer their patients more when they came in. As a result of that, doctor production per visit went up 12%. So you can kind of see these little, how we're moving the meter in a lot of little places, but doctor productivity, doctor revenue per visit went up 12%. We looked at insurance coding, added codes for things. What was amazing about this, Megan, is there were things they were doing that they weren't even coding for.
Oh, yeah.
Or they weren't using the right code. So we added, they're using desensitizer, but they weren't coding for it. I already mentioned the fluoride deal, x-rays, buildups. I mean, there are all kinds of different things that they weren't coding for or weren't coding correctly for that, again, made an impact on the total result. In the financial arrangements area, we expanded the third-party financing options so that there were more options for patients to choose from based on their situation. We added a membership plan. Yeah, again, it's giving patients more options. So to that point, Megan, if somebody does not have a membership plan in place, how do they get started? What's the first step?
First step is reaching out, figure out what's your strategy? What's your why on implementing the membership plan? In this conversation, it's, you want to potentially be insurance free. So that's your strategy. And it's reach out, like for Plan Forward, we'd have a conversation and do a financial analysis to see where should these fees maybe be to really make this plan profitable for your uninsured patients. But also one thing I want to keep in mind, or I would recommend keeping in mind, is when you're thinking about dropping out of network, and Steve, feel free to chime in if you think differently or have anything to add, but these insured patients who are on this insurance plan that you're considering dropping, they are not necessarily the same patients that are going to drop that insurance plan and join your membership plan, because it all depends on who's paying the premium for that insurance plan. Mm-hmm. If they are employed by an employer that's paying 100% of their insurance premium, it's not going to make financial sense for them to drop their insurance and pay $400 or so for a membership plan. So just want to set that reality that just because you have a membership plan there doesn't mean all the patients that are on this insurance plan that you're going to go out of network with are going to drop that and switch to the membership plan. Instead, this is a marketing tool, and that's really how it should be treated. This is, you want to be strategic, you want to be creative, and you want to use the membership plan as an alternative to attract the new types of patients that you want to, that you want to serve, or help give the underinsured patients who maybe are paying too much for that premium a reason to kind of redo the math and figure out, maybe I want to drop this and join the membership plan. You certainly will have patients drop the insurance plan, but so many practices come to us and they're like, we want to drop Cigna, and we think all these Cigna patients will join our membership plan because Cigna has a terrible reimbursement rate. It's like, it doesn't matter what your reimbursement is, it matters who's paying their premium.
Yep. So again, it's just an example of more options, more
Yeah,
alternatives. If you have that as part of your whole mix,
yeah,
Megan, we recommend everybody ought to have one, whether you're in network or out of network. You ought to have this a membership plan in place. It just, again, more options that people have,
mhm,
then you're able to offer something that fits their specific situation and helps retain them as a patient.
absolutely.
So if you're not, call Megan.
All right, planforward.io. Get in
Uh,
touch.
Next thing we added was we added dental warranty patient protection program. This is a loyalty, keeps the patients in the practice, plus it's an added revenue. So this is the only one of its type in the country where it's a third party patient protection plan that has nationwide coverage. So no matter where they are, they're covered for anything that you do, and they have to stay on track with their regular hygiene visits. So again, additional revenue, but also patient loyalty. So again, something else to consider. Here's what, this is just a resource. You can scan this, and Dental Warranty offers this free download of how you create patient peace of mind for the procedures that you are doing. They've kind of mapped all this out based on consumer research. So you can scan that, and they'll send you this warranty, patient satisfaction, peace of mind roadmap, and the things you got to have built in to your entire process to create more peace of mind in everything you do to keep your patients coming back. So
Mhm.
again, all these little things that add up to be big things. Finally, really worked on the financial arrangements protocol and verbal skills. So got just a lot more skilled at presenting financial arrangements and how they were presented. And then finally, implemented what we call our TOPS Easy Pay financial presentation format. And Megan, what this is, I'll give it to you in short form. One fee. The kiss of death in financial arrangements is to use the financial sheet that comes out of your practice management software. It's the worst because it itemizes every procedure with abbreviations that nobody can understand. And what patients automatically do is they go to the highest price thing on the list and they go, what's this? Do I have to have this? This is really expensive. And they start crossing things off the list and they destroy the whole treatment plan. Stop it. So this, uh, the financial presentation that we use, that we designed, is one fee. You present one fee so that they're making a decision about, do I want to get this treatment done for the benefit that I want? We're not going through and trying to tear the whole thing apart.
Mhm.
So here we go. Here's the net effect of all of that. 100% collections. Okay, so we collected everything that was due, and with a 20% decrease in fees, they had almost a 10% increase in top line revenue. So it was a result. They were even shocked. I mean, it was a lot of work to do this, but with the trauma they went through when they found out they were going to get their fees cut 20%, to end up with a 10% increase in revenue was a remarkable result. That's kind of the equivalent of a 30% increase in practice performance. So again, they asked all the questions. They chose to stay in network. And even if you choose to stay in network, there's things you can do that will continue to build the practice. So that's case study number one. You ready for number two, Megan?
I am, but we have a question.
Go for it.
Is that Easy Pay financing presentation a service they offer?
Yeah. Oh, that we offer? Yes. Yeah. So, and I'll give you a resource here to access that. So yeah, it's we'll walk you through the form, the presentation, the whole deal. It streamlines financial arrangements. And what I love about it, Megan, is the X factor on the results in financial arrangements is it's remarkable. It's amazing.
Wow.
Okay. Case study number two, totally different direction. So this is a practice that their last year in network, they collected $1.8 million, and they wrote off $500,000. So their net collections were $1.8 million, but they actually produced $500,000 more than that.
Wow.
And that was on over 4,000 patients. They went through all the questions that we went through, target market, clinical, all of those things, and what percentage of their patient base, the whole deal. and they decided, you know what, we can do it. We can make the move to out of network and we'll be just fine. Now, I will tell you on this one, Megan, this was a little too much for comfort for me. Their proportion of contracted patients, in-network patients, was close to 50%. It was pretty high. So when they made the decision, they said, you know, we're going to do it. We're pulling the plug. We're going to do it. I said, okay, just know if you got half the patients, you know, there's a risk here. But they did it, and I'll show you how they did it to have a very successful result. So here's what they did: is second year when they're the second year after they're out of network, they actually had an 8% increase in collections.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the difference in the patient base. They lost some patients.
Yep. I've seen that so many times
Yeah,
where
so this is first year and second year. So
yeah.
first year out of network, they stayed about even, right? Because they were doing about $1.8 million before in collections. So their collections stayed the same on fewer patients. Second year, the collections went up on
Mm-hmm.
still fewer patients.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, there is some attrition. I'll show you how to minimize the attrition. But the point was, in this particular case, what the team said is the biggest, you know what their biggest challenge was?
What?
Getting used to not having just frenetic everything going on. Is the pace slowed way down? They're seeing fewer patients, doing more on those patients. And they said that was, they figured out they were addicted to activity. When that patient flow slowed down, it was like something's wrong.
Yeah.
But then they
Did,
looked at their collections and they go like, but everything's right. Different pace.
did they implement anything new or do anything to get ready for D-Day?
So glad you asked. Yes. I'll walk you through some specifics of that. So here's the question on both of these case studies. Which practice made the right decision?
They both did.
They
Yeah.
both did, based on their practice, their market. So again, there's no one right answer. You got to figure this out for your practice. So where do you start? Where's the starting point on this so that you can have a successful outcome like these two practices have had? So I'm going to give you some tips on, but in addition to those questions that you're, I've challenged you to ask yourselves, here's some things to do. Number one, read the contract. What did you sign up for? And I say that laughing because you would not believe how many people are in network, how many practitioners are in network. They have never read the contract.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any idea what they signed up for. It's
Mm-hmm.
great reading.
That's why they haven't read it. It's stereo instructions.
See what you agreed to,
Yeah.
because every contract is different. They're not all the same. See what you agreed to. Okay, then once you've familiarized yourself with that, then you're going to do a fee analysis. So this is the analysis I referred to earlier, Megan, where you're going to look at your fee for service fees and how they compare in your marketplace. If you haven't done this, if you don't do this on a regular yearly basis, I guarantee you're going to find your fees are all over the map. We've worked with practices that haven't done this in years, and they got some fees that are higher or lower. And so getting those fees aligned so that they're relevant in your marketplace can make a big difference in terms of your revenue. And I'll give you a resource for that in just a minute. Go to work on your verbal skills. And I'm going to give you some examples of verbal skills that are critically important as an example. So here's one that everybody ought to work on. And it's this question. Practices get this question every day. Do you take my insurance? People call. Do you take my insurance? Everybody has to deal with this. Well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, in terms of are you in network or out of network. So what we find, if you haven't worked on this, that patients say, do you take my insurance and what insurance do you have? And if it's something that you're not in network with, the immediate answer is nope, we're not in network. Game over. So you just lost an opportunity. So here's my question, network, Megan, is does the practice have to be in network for the patient to go to that practice?
No.
Of course not. We are living in a free country. You may go where you choose. Most patients don't understand that. So
Right.
here's how we solve that. what benefits do you have? So patient, Megan, you're going to be the patient. You just asked me, do you take my insurance? And I'm going to say, what benefits do you have, Megan? Who's your, you tell me. So let's say it's not an insurance company we're in network with.
Okay.
So instead of saying no, here's what I'm going to say. And I'll give you a resource. You don't have to write all this down. This one's a little involved. So I'm going to say, Megan, you're in luck. We have a lot of patients that have benefits with XYZ company. Now, you can only say this if it's true. But in most cases, it's true. You have patients that come to your practice and you're not in network and they come to your practice anyway. So it's, in most cases, this is true. So I would say, so Megan, you're in luck. We have a lot of patients that have benefits with XYZ company. In fact, we're an unrestricted provider, which means we work with all types of dental benefits. Now, we don't happen to be contracted with XYZ. And here's the key. Would you like to know why our patients with XYZ benefits choose our practice? What are you going to say, Megan?
Sure.
You're not going to say, no, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Of course, you're going to say yes. So that's the key question. Would you like to know why our patients with your benefits choose our practice? They will always say yes. And that's what I want. I want a dialogue here. And then what I say is, so what they tell us is that after looking at all their other options, they choose to come to our office because they haven't been able to find the level of service we provide with the clinical expertise and excellence that Dr. Amazing provides. Okay, now here's the question. Megan, would a Monday or a Wednesday be more convenient for you for your first appointment? I'm going to ask for the appointment, right? So that's a very detailed verbal skill. In the download I'm going to send you, it's got all that scripted out. But my point is, there are all kinds of opportunities every day that are missed because we don't have a system in place to capture. I mean, that's a patient that'll come to the practice. We deal with them properly. They'll be out of network. We don't have to deal with it. We'll file their benefits for them. And if it's explained properly, we've saved an opportunity. So that's an example of dozens of different verbal skills that when done correctly, will build the practice. All right, so here's the resource. You can grab your phone, and I think, Megan, you're going to put the link in the chat box, right?
Yep.
As you can tell, there is a lot to this topic. Would you agree?
Yes.
This
It
is
is
not a lot of questions, a lot of specifics. So you can scan that QR code and download the ebook, and it has resources that have to do with what we've talked about so far and more that'll help you navigate through this process. This is not a one and done thing. I mean, most of these things you ought to be doing ongoing anyway. And so this is packed with resources, verbal skills, questions, and analysis to help you navigate through that whole process. All right, if you got that, I'm going to move on because I'm not done yet.
And the link is in the chat, so feel free to grab that.
In the chat. You got it. All right, now, if you have not done a fee analysis lately, I would say if you haven't done a fee analysis in the last year, Megan, we recommend every year. We would be happy for your participants that are on this webinar today to do that complimentary.
Wow, that's a huge.
So all you have to do is just send us an email, answers@totalpatientservice.com. And then in the subject line, just put fee analysis. Megan loves me. But
Perfect.
But fee analysis and just reference plan forward as your source. So we don't do this for everybody, but for everybody who's participating today, we'll do this complimentary. And then if you'll include, just say, please provide fee analysis and the zip code, your zip code. There may be some additional questions and information we need from you. We've really tried to streamline this whole process. So shoot us an email and we'd be happy to put that together to you. It'll come back in the form of a report that'll very simply help you see where your existing fees are compared to the percentile basis in your market. So are you underpriced, overpriced? You can get a comparison there. So again, we recommend every practice do it at least once a year.
So do they submit their fees to you along with the zip code, or you just do
Yeah,
the analysis in their area and send them that?
yeah, send us the zip code first. We may ask for some, depending on the practice management software, we'll have some little interaction here. We try and
Okay,
customize this as much as we can.
that's great.
Um,
Thank you, Steve. That's a wonderful offer.
Happy to do it. Quick reminders. Procedure mix. Again, what's your procedure mix? Number two, as you go through this, is what's your marketing strategy? If you're just taking what's coming to you versus Megan doing what we talked about is deciding on your target market. What are you doing to target? What are you trying to do to attract the kind of patients you want in your practice? Especially if you're going to make a move with insurance and change your relationship there, you got to have a marketing strategy in place to attract the kind of patients that you want. And
Mhm.
then it's a team effort. I mean, everybody on your team has to be on board with this and discuss it well in advance, what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, how it benefits your patients, all of those things. Don't make this decision in a vacuum. You've got to have the whole team on board. So with that, here's just, again, just a couple of other things. Make sure your financial arrangement systems are dialed in like we talked about today, especially when you're filing insurance out of network versus in network, providing payment options. Again, a lot of things to have in place. You know, your make sure your verbal skills in place, and then pick a date. If you're going to go out of network, you pick a date. And here's the secret, Megan. It has to be at least 6 months out.
Yeah.
And I know it's like, once I made the decision, I just want to do it. 6 months out. I got to have at least 6 months, a 6 month runtime, because we're going to ramp up to this. And the last thing, if you don't hear anything else today, would you please hear me on this? The biggest mistake practices make when going out of network. Are you ready?
Yep.
Biggest mistake. Do not do this. Do not send a letter to your patients. Don't do it. It's an invitation for them to leave the practice. Don't send a letter. You're going to do this face to face. That's why I say 6 months out, because you're going to have a face-to-face conversation with your patients to let them know, here's the move we're making and why, and here's what that means to you and how we're going to continue working together. It's the highest patient retention thing you can do. You send the letter, you're going to lose them. Don't send the letter. Have I made my point, Megan?
You have to me. So
I don't know what it is about that. It's the first thing everybody wants to do is send their patients a letter. Don't do it. Do not send the letter. You have
well,
to do.
I love that you say 6 months because they should be on their hygiene protocol and they should have been in within the last 6 months. So they've
Correct.
had the opportunity to come in and have the conversation with you. If they
That's right.
come in 9 months or 12 months or 15 months and they're like, wait a minute, this has changed, well, then there's an opportunity for you to also mention that we had conversations as people were coming in, when we chose to make the decision, et
Yep.
cetera.
And so that's incentive to get all those patients in the office during that 6 month period so you can talk to them face to face. Don't
Right.
want to send them a letter. So this is what we call priming in human psychology. Priming is, preheating patients, explaining to them in advance what's going to happen, how everything's going to work, so that it's not a shock and a surprise, right? We're priming them in advance. Here's how we're doing this. This is why. Here's how we're going to work together in the future. Prime, prime, prime. So, but I need the runtime to be able to do that. So
Question, Damon.
yep.
They ask, why not outline in the letter about the quality of care and flexibility? Washington State is very much a written agreement state. Should they sign something or they upload something and put it into their charts?
Yeah. So here's the reason we prefer the face to face. Dentistry is a relationship business. The best practices we work with, Megan, they have amazing relationships with their patients. And so if I'm going to make this kind of a change, I want the opportunity to have the conversation face to face so we can resolve concerns, so we can talk about, because this is a back and forth. They're going to have a lot of questions. So I want to be present to be able to do that. And
Mhm.
hold their hand, figuratively speaking, and walk them through this process. You're not going to save all your patients, but you won't save any of them unless you have this opportunity to have a conversation. So that's why I'm so passionate about the don't send the letter, because they're going to have questions. This is a relationship. Um, if here's the best analogy I could say. I mean, if you're dating somebody, do you want them to break up by text message, send you a letter, or do you want to have a face-to-face conversation, right?
And
So that's the whole point.
And to piggyback on that, I mean, I was the person in the front office or the financial coordinator having the conversation. So I want to encourage the practice owners or the office managers to like role play this and prepare and practice these verbal skills and these conversations. Because if you practice them and you're more prepared and you anticipate the 10 questions you're going to get, then you're going to be more confident going into that and then have that conversation with empathy because you really do believe this is in the best interest of them, their experience and their care in your practice. But I think
Got it.
helping these people on the front lines feel more prepared is very key.
100%. That's why the runtime is so important.
Um, uh,
Bottom line. Oh, go ahead.
there are just some questions coming in.
Perfect. Let me just address
Yep.
and we'll do the questions.
Yep.
If you decide to make a move based on the questions that we presented today, just know it's going to be a new reality. It's not going to be like it's been in the past. And that should be a good thing because you're making this change to make things different, better for you, better for your patients. And you got to be ready for that. And so here's the next steps, what we recommend, regardless of what decision you make. Here's the next steps. Number one, do the analysis. Ask yourself the questions that we've posed here today. Do the fee analysis. Do all your analysis up front. Then create your strategy, whether it's in network, out of network, combination of the two. Decide on your strategy. And then, Megan, I recommend get a mentor. Find somebody who's done this and done it successfully. I'm a huge, huge believer in copying genius instead of creating mediocrity. So find people who have done this. We can connect practices. We practice all over the country that have made this decision and gone in different directions. There's plenty of mentors out there that can help you with those decisions. So I've thrown a lot at everybody in the last hour, a lot of questions. I've loaded you up with work. So giving you more questions that have answers. But again, every practice is different. You have to answer the questions. So speaking of questions, what additional questions we have? That's the QR code for the CE for today. So while we're answering the rest of the questions, Megan, tell me additional questions we have from everybody.
So one is, I have a lot of patients who call in advance of their appointment and ask if we're still in network with that plan. They ask as if they are either starting a new job or renewing job. I have really good communication with my patients and I'm very upfront.
Perfect. Yeah. So again, I'd take that verbal skill we talked about. So let's say if you're out of network, I would use that same thing. So if it's, if you're in network with whomever, I would say, again, I'd say, Megan, we have a lot of patients who have those same benefits. We are an unrestricted provider, which means we can work with all types of insurance. Can I share with you how we work with our patients who have your benefits? Here's how we do it. Be very, very crystal clear with them of how you work with their benefits. So it's not a, are you in network or out of network question. It is, you're going to answer the question, here's how we work with all of our patients who have your benefits. Here's what you can expect.
Mhm. I
That's,
love.
you're going to have a better chance of saving the patient and retaining them if you'll approach it that way than if you just say in or out. Most people, Megan, I don't even know what it means to be in or out. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it's really confusing for most people.
Another question, many insurances require 3 months notice to drop. Are we still having conversations 3 months prior to reaching out to insurance?
Yes. So the last thing that you're going to do is give notice to the insurance company. That's the last thing. I
Yes.
want to be able to talk to all those patients first, because part of that conversation might be, hey, Megan, you may receive a letter from your
Better.
insurance company telling you that you have to pick a new dentist, and that is not correct. You can go to any dentist you want. So you
Mhm.
preheat them to say, yeah, you're probably going to get a letter. This is what it's going to say, but please know you always have a choice.
Mhm.
When they get the letter, they go, ah, there it is. They told me it was coming.
Yep.
Just toss it.
I love the key like token word you used. We are an unrestricted
Unrestricted provider. Because we are.
provider.
I mean, you can work with all types of
Mhm.
insurance.
That's great. Oh my gosh, we are literally right on the minute. One
We
minute.
are.
All the
Okay.
questions. Oh, in and out of
Thinking
network.
about the fee analysis. We're good there.
Yep.
Questions. You can go to our website, totalpatientservice.com. Live chat. It is not a bot, Megan. It's not a computer. It's a live person. Call us, email us. Heck, come over to my house.
What
I'm in
time's
Dallas,
dinner?
Texas. I'm right in the middle of the country. But we're on a mission, as I mentioned, to make dentistry the #1 patient service place in healthcare. I think we can do it. And so this is one part of that whole equation that'll help you do it. So ebook, we gave you that QR code. We are doing programs all over the country all the time, starting out first thing, all kinds of different things. So you can go to our website and take a look at the different courses that we do. We got a whole team, and there's all the contact information. So Megan, thanks for being the host today. This was awesome.
Yes. Are
I
you
love
kidding?
doing the interactive stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I had the easy role. You did the hard part, but
And I love what Plan Forward does. You know, the whole customized approach to doing a membership plan. Every practice ought to have a membership plan. Everybody
agree.
ought to be doing it. It's just one more option that you have in the toolbox that helps retain patients and makes dentistry more available to everybody. So keep up the good work.
Likewise, thank you so much for sharing your genius. And you guys get in touch with Steve and his team. And thanks again for joining us. We will be sending a follow-up email with all these good resources in the next couple days.
Thank you,
Take care,
Megan.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody, for putting up with me for the last hour.
you. Thanks so much, Steve. Take
Have a good
care.
day. Thanks, everybody.